Can everybody hear me in the back? Good. Because otherwise you wind up with this because I keep taking it away from my mouth every time I say something. Welcome to How to Avoid Bad Writing. Before we get into it, this isn't a panel on how to get proper Google search results. It's how to write without it sucking. My name is Richard Schaefer. I'm the founder and webmaster of Tekko2015. It's not as dirty as it sounds. It's a play on words. It's Richard, named after my grandfather Dick. Dick Jutsu. Jutsu is Japanese for way or style. It's Richard's style. If you want an actual porn name, go to the guy I was named after, Dick Pierce. I'm also the co-founder, writer, and head developer for a little indie game company, Nick3 Entertainment. A manager of HR there. And I'm also the chief tech staffer on writerschatroom.com.
Sorry. Just keep going. Or?
Those are the two titles we've made, Nick3 Entertainment, Dynasty Heroes. If anybody's into Dynasty Warriors, it is a parody of that in loose, vague RPG form. Like I said, chief tech staffer. I also run the forum. And there's my book called Escort. It's available since the 1st. Scatter through the room with bookmarks. If you don't have one, we can get one to you before you leave. Bookmarks are free, books not.
It's usually how it goes.
Alright, now, first of all, this is not a lesson on how to do good writing, because good writing is very subjective. If you're in the mood for science fiction and you pick up War and Peace, regardless of how good it is, it's not going to be good writing, even at that particular moment. If you don't like historical fiction, you will not like War and Peace. Bad writing, however, is universal. If you were in the mood for science fiction and you pick up a terrible science fiction book, it will be terrible to you. We're going to be discussing cliches, different tropes. Remember that a cliche is a trope that is way overused. All kinds of different things. And closer to the end, we'll show you a little bit how to develop more realistic characters, because ultimately that is what drives good fiction, even good non-fiction. I've been kind of somewhat addicted lately to a Stephen Turnbull reference book, because stories of the medieval period, and he takes one thing Stephen Turnbull's good with is taking very personifiable characteristic to his history. So even though he's giving you a broad history of England and France, he's telling you all about, all these different people and their stories, De Westland, King Edward. It's interesting, even though it's a reference book. So I'm a nerd, I love reference books. First thing we're going to get over is Allegory. It is the representation of an abstract or spiritual meaning through concrete or material forms. Figurative treatment of one subject under the guise of another, a symbolical narrative. It comes from the Greek word allegoria, to speak as if implying something else. Good example of an allegory is Plato's Allegory of the Cave. It tells you right there, it's in the title. The story of the Allegory of the Cave is a bunch of prisoners are chained together with facing a cave. There's a fire behind them. The only thing they have witnessed in their entire lives is the shadows of the people on the wall. All the people behind them, there's shadows on the wall. And the story is each one of them comes up with an idea of what they think the real world is outside of the cave, based on these shadows. It's an allegory for the lack of knowledge and misinformation. People who are ignorant and don't know anything will just come up with the grandest idea they can think of. Another one, if you've ever seen the movie The Deer Hunter, it's a little bit older movie. Russian roulette plays a big part of it. Even though, during the Vietnam War, there are no recorded cases of Russian roulette ever being forced upon prisoners. But it's an allegory to dehumanizing your enemy in the face of defeat. In order to defeat an enemy, a lot of times in war, dehumanize them. It's hard to send humans to go fight other humans and murder them unless you convince them that, hey, these aren't real people anyway. Oh, alright, let's go shoot them. A bad example B-movie I watched some years ago. I don't remember the title. I didn't care to recall it. I didn't bother looking it up because it was that bad. It's a group of hunters going through the Iberian forest. Iberia is Spain, Portugal, all that. In one scene, they're attacked by a lion, and the main character's father is eaten by the lion. The whole movie was an allegory for this guy's life story. The lion, Leo, Zodiac, represents the sun. The lion attacking his father died of skin cancer. This is a really stupid story, because there are no lions in Spain. The Grey, Liam Neeson, that movie is all allegorical. Wolves don't exactly act like that, but it's an allegory for how much life sucks, or something like that. Mary Sue's and Gary Stu's for the male version. It's a slightly debatable term. You go on different places and you'll find different exact definitions, but essentially it's a character. It doesn't have to be fan fiction. There's plenty of original, works, but a character that's just too great at anything or everything. Actually, you'll find this a lot in anime or manga. May not even be the main character, just somebody that's just amazing no matter what they do. Too perfect to really exist. Someone that has the perfect physique even though they never work out. They know the answer to everything even though they've never picked up a book. Or the person that, they've never been in a fight before and someone hands them a sword and they're just defeats everybody around them. Or they're just too well liked by everyone. They have no discerning feature that's fantastic, but everybody's just madly in love with them and wants to be their friend. Filled with a natural talent that overshows the experienced masters of all things. Like I said, somebody who's just given a sword. If anybody's ever seen Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, the girl character there, the one that steals the sword in the opening, she is a Mary Sue. She is able to defeat the master of the temple dojo later on in the movie simply because she just has natural talent and a fantastic sword. The fact this woman has 40 years experience means nothing against this little girl. It means nothing. Where they have unnatural physical capabilities or features. I believe, what's it called? Alexandria syndrome or something like that. White hair, purple eyes. It went through the internet that everybody believed that it was a real thing. It was something that a woman came up with for her fan fiction. And it's a Mary Sue characteristic. Completely hairless, except for the top of their heads and their eyebrows. They have purple irises. Just unnatural. Often a Mary Sue or a Gary Stu is an author avatar, which an author avatar itself isn't necessarily a bad thing. But whenever you put yourself into the story, if you're going to create an author avatar, a good way to do it is look at what you're good at and increase that to the level where you can be the hero of the story. But also look at your flaws and increase that to the level where it's just insane. One story that I've written, it's not published. The main character is kind of an author avatar for me. Now I have arachnophobia. He has severe arachnophobia. If there's a spider in this room, even though he's an experienced soldier, he could, pick a nickel off of a barn at 500 paces, but if a spider lands on him, he will crap his pants.
Yeah, because you won't.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. Good examples of author avatars. John Arbuckle was an author avatar of Jim Davis. If you read anything Garfield, you have seen how much of a mess John Arbuckle is. That was Jim Davis putting himself in there, and that's a good example. Alan Wake, if you've ever played the Alan Wake games, Sam Lake wrote it. He's the same guy that wrote Max Payne. Alan Wake is a very clear author avatar. He's a writer, like Sam Lake, who's basing everything off of another writer. Bad examples, Rayford Steele and Buck Williams from Left Behind. They're stand-ins for the authors Tim LaHaye and Jerry Jenkins. Both of those guys are overweight, out of shape, have no combat experience. These author avatars are Rayford and Buck. They're physically fit, they're great, at everything. And they're just them imagining, what if we were actually good at something? Let's write that. If anybody likes Twilight, you should probably leave now. Bella Swan and Melanie Strider are stand-ins for Stephanie Myers. You may even hear often that Melanie Strider is a spoonerism of Stephanie Meyer. By definition, it's not. Spoonerism of Stephanie Meyer would be Methany Steyer. But you get the idea of why that comes up. Either way, she wasn't very, original with the name. If you've ever seen Garfield minus Garfield, it's the story of John Arbuckle. The top one is from the actual site, the bottom one is my own attempt because I was bored one day. And apparently I have a toast fetish. Next up, we'll reach Chekhov's gun and red herrings. Chekhov's gun is the idea that something in the story must be essential to it. Chekhov came from a day whenever they were stage plays. He actually started out as a prop master and then became a writer of plays himself. So his idea was, if you put a gun on a wall in the first act, that gun better be used by the end of the play. Otherwise, it's pointless for him, the prop master, to put the gun there. He's got to find a gun, he's got to hang it there, he's got to make sure it's accessible. Good example is Shaun of the Dead. They go to a bar called the Winchester. Hanging up is a Winchester rifle. They talk about it. One guy says, it's probably not even usable. It's hanging on the wall. It's certainly not going to be loaded. Later on, they drop it off the wall and shoot zombies with it. Works perfectly fine, even though it's been there for 40 years without being maintained. It's loaded. Yeah, it works fine. Anybody's played Final Fantasy VII? Some of you might have. The big cannon that you see on disc 1 that does nothing. What is it, disc 3? Boom! Takes out one of the weapons. Hope I didn't spoil anything for you. The game is older than some of the people in this room. I hope I didn't spoil anything.
I think we're spoiler free.
A red herring is the exact opposite. A red herring would be putting the gun on there, commenting about the gun, and then never doing anything with it. It leads the reader, viewer, whatever, player astray, and convinces them that it's not actually that. Good example, if anybody's ever seen a pup named Scooby-Doo?
Yes.
There was a character named Red Herring. In every episode, Fred was like, you know who did it? It was Red Herring. How many times was Red Herring actually the bad guy?
Fred had a problem.
Exactly. Once. And it was the episode where everybody bet Fred, I'll bet you can't go a whole day without accusing Red Herring. I was like, fine. And every time it was like, I'll bet, never mind, I'll reserve. And that one time was when it was Red Herring.
Ready to make the crime. That's why nobody's gonna.
That's Anton Chekhov. And as he said, if you say in the first chapter there's a rifle hanging on the wall, in the second or third chapter it absolutely must go off. If it's not going to be fired, it shouldn't be hanging there. Like I said, he started out as a prop master. Another good example. Anybody ever watch My Little Pony?
Yeah.
The fight with Discord. What is Celestia doing? She's spike faxing all of the documents, all of the scrolls that they've written to her through the entire last season to remind them of their friendship.
Sorry.
Somebody that we got the red herring.
I bet you thought there was going to be a slide there. Next up is point of view. There are technically 3 points of view in any story. First person is written from the view of the character. And it will be written like, I did this, or I did that. You can write it in present tense too. I am doing this, I am doing that. Third person, it's written from the point of view of the narrator. Most stories are written in third person. A lot of them are also written in first person. Third person is, if I was talking about your life, you walked into the room, well, if I was talking about your life, I would say, Stephen walked into the room, Stephen sat down, Stephen enjoyed the panel. Second person point of view, and there is a debate in the writing world whether this exists. The people who say that it doesn't are wrong. Second person point of view is written from your point of view of the writer, of the reader, of the player, of the watcher. If you've ever played an adventure game from the old days, one of the Sierra Classics, King's Quest, Police Quest, probably anything that ends in Quest. Even had Space Quest. They made a movie, a relation to that one. That was a good bigger one. Second person is, you walked into the room, you did this, you did that. You've you've ever read a Choose Your Own Adventure book, a lot of them are written from second-person perspective.
Sorry.
Another part of it is another section of point of view. You get this a lot in third person, particularly third person omnipotent. That's where the narrator knows what the character is thinking. You have to be careful though. The idea is each chapter, or at least each section, should be from, even if you're a third person, imagine yourself behind that person, witnessing it from their perspective. So imagine they've told you about it and you're writing it now. You don't want to what's called head hopping. Example, head hopping. Lisa, you're such a jerk, cried Anne, frustrated by her friend's unusual behavior. She couldn't understand it. So we're clearly in Lisa's mind. And then, I'm sorry, Lisa sighed, depressed by Anne's outburst. That's not good because now we've just jumped into Lisa's mind. We know that she feels depressed. We shouldn't. Instead, we have this. Lisa, you're such a jerk, cried Anne, frustrated by her friend's unusual behavior. She couldn't understand it. I'm sorry, Lisa sighed. She looked depressed. It doesn't seem like much, but that change can define things. Because if you know what every character is thinking, there's no mystery. If you know why Lisa is acting this way, then in 3 chapters when it's revealed, oh, it's because, Lisa's on drugs or something. Well, you already know because 3 chapters ago you had a scene where Anne walks out of the room and Lisa shoots up. It's not as interesting anymore. It might be a little hard to see with the picture. Point of view. Grammar, punctuation, and syntax. Remember that a novel, a game, whatever you're writing, it's not a Facebook post. Although Facebook has their grammar Nazis that will come in with their asterisk there. Capitalization is very important. Proper nouns, place names, titles. I will give you an example of, and remember that if you get any of this wrong, it doesn't mean I suck, I'm done with writing. You just have to work at it. Or get a job as a professional journalist. I used to work at the Post-Gazette. I believe it was a local man, I don't remember his name. He's a war hero, achieved the rank of Major General, and the person who typed up the story, I wasn't part of the story, but I read it whenever it had all the red ink on it. She wrote that he achieved the rank of Major General. Major General is a title. The M in Major and the G in General should be capitalized. The editor said, oh, Major General, lowercase that. So when it actually went to print, it said, in lowercase, Major General. In lowercase, that means that he was an important general. He was a Major General. That would be like saying, oh, King Edward, but not capitalizing King. That just means that, oh, he was a king. His name happened to be Edward. But that wasn't his title. It was. Commas, commas, and more commas. Yes, I am a huge fan of the Oxford comma. That is this comma here. Because without that comma, sometimes it gets difficult to figure out what you're saying. Always use a comma to separate things. Unless your publisher tells you different, at which point you tell them, no. And then you go find another publisher because they won't publish your book. I was lucky enough to find a publisher that liked the Oxford comma too, and I was like, yes.
Self-published?
No. Eternal Press is the name of my publisher. The revision of Damnation Books. But I didn't have werewolves or vampires, so I had to go through Eternal Press. Also, Timothy and I went to the park. It's not me and Timothy went to the park. Take yourself out of it, that still sound right. Without Timothy, me went to park! Numbers. Technically, anything less than 100, you should always use words. Anything more than 100, you can use, less than 100, you can use numbers. Anything more than 100, you can use word form. The best bet is just to use word form all the time. The exception to that is dates, but even then, if you want to put, the 7th instead of, May 7th. This is fan fiction. It has terrible grammar and syntax to it. Just when I had my piece, I muttered, then heard a feminine chuckle. I turned around and stared at the woman in front of me. She looked like a goddess from Greek mythology. I'm sorry, it looks like I disturbed your self-peace. My name is Amaterasu, and you're in the in-between. She informed me that's not possible. My rational self screamed. My mind agreed. You're joking, I agreed. Does anyone even want me to finish that?
Please no.
Yes.
End the suffering.
Thank you. Please no. Yes.
Try to lull.
This is a little better. Masayuki Punchiro quietly sat in his study, reading over a strange book as he copied several verses onto another sheet of paper and penned his own commentary beside the quotes. The book had Biblio written on it, in both Portuguese and Japanese. Punchiro was finding the most insightful passages to try to convince the rebellious priest Kasoto to stand down. My lord, Takedono has arrived. A guard announced from outside Punchiro's office. Which one would you rather read?
This one.
Yeah. Every bit of dialogue has its own paragraph, and it's best, even if somebody is talking and another person isn't talking in between them, if it's a monologue that other people are involved in, separate thoughts, you may want to break it up. A paragraph really shouldn't be more than 4 lines long.
Good. Sorry.
Alright, tense. There are 3 tense. There are future tense. That will be a 10 someday. There is present tense. That is currently a 10. And there's past tense. That will be a 10. Something you have to remember is if you're writing a story in a particular tense, you have to remain in that tense. If you're writing, I did this, I did that, don't in the middle of a sentence say, Steve did this, and then is doing that. Alright, characters. A good character is someone the reader can sympathize with, understand, support, or hate. Main characters should be likable or at least supportable. If your main character is an anti-hero, you may not like him, you may not be able to see eye to eye with him, you don't agree with what he's doing, but you can understand why he's doing it. And all through the story you can be along with him like, the ends to a means, you're doing the right thing but not in the right way. Yeah, you're defeating the Dark Lord, but you're murdering a bunch of civilians in the process. The sidekicks can be likable even more than your hero. It's better for the hero to be likable. If anybody's watched Naruto and doesn't like Naruto, myself, love Shikamaru and all the other characters. That's a case where you like the sidekicks more than you like the main character. That is acceptable. It's not the best thing. If you're going to do that, you want to have a lot of sections where you just have the side characters, or you don't want to have too many spots where it's the main character alone.
Broccoli is less whiny. Broccoli is less whiny.
Yes. There are 3 types of villains. The villains you hate with a passion. These are Hitler's the world. You hate them. You look at them, what they're doing, you don't agree with it at all. You want the main characters to defeat them. The villains that you can sympathize with but can't support. These are the guys that, alright, I see why you're doing this, but it's not the right thing. Yeah, the Republic, attacked your village and killed your wife, but you shouldn't burn the entire Republic to the ground. Maybe conquer it, change the laws, but don't murder a bunch of other civilians in vengeance. And there's the villains that you don't really give a crap about. Unfortunately, that's the general type of villain you get. These are the guys who are like, I will spread my evil empire of evil all over the place. You don't really care about them generally. On the subject of anti-heroes, how many people watch DBC and Vegeta is their favorite character?
The bridge.
I prefer Bridge.
Exactly. Because when you've got Goku against Vegeta, who do you care more about? The guy that actually has substance. Goku's just like, I want to fight people and eat. Vegeta's like, I kind of want to kill you because of that.
My God, Goku's the Fonz.
Hey, that's Napoleon's.
Good villains. If your villain ever says something akin to I am evil, you got a bad villain. Nobody actually thinks they're evil. remember that in your story, the main character is the main character. But for the sidekick, he's the main character of his own life story. And that's how he goes through life thinking, this is my story. I'm helping Steve. He might be, the chosen one, but I'm helping Steve. The villain's looking at it like, I gotta kill Steve. This is my life's goal. This is what my story's about.
He's popular at least.
The best villain is also often the one that you can see, like I said, the one you can see eye to eye with, but just can't agree with. Or even if you can agree with them, but it's like, you're not doing it right.
Heisenberg.
Every villain is a hero in his own mind. The exception to everything I just told you is parody or satire. However, if you're writing a parody, Dynasty Heroes was, you have to remember that any rule that you break must be intentional, must be to lampshade it, and you must make it obvious. The Scary Movie series, which is actually a poor example, but yeah, every trope that they break is because they're breaking that trope. Comedy and parody are not always synonymous. You can make a parody without it being funny. Generally, that is where you get into the realm of satire. Dramatic parody. Yeah, like I said, if you violate a rule and it's not intentional, you're getting into the realm of bad writing, which is what we're here to avoid. Now, a few of my bad examples, just to show you that nobody starts off perfect. Nobody starts off as Stephen King. Even that
Good.
Alright, when I was 11, I got Shogun Total War. Got me into the samurai kick, so I wrote a story. Yeah, two main characters were Hosokawa Tadawaki, because I even spelled his name wrong when I wrote it. It should be Tadaoki. And Torikachiza. It was the story of in 1543 when the Portuguese first bring guns, two factions of a clan. One supports guns, the other doesn't. If you can see how many swords the non-gun guy has, which you really can't, he's got two on each hip, one in each hand, two nodachis on his back, he's got 9 yotantos here on his shins, the guy with the gun has 3 pistols across his chest, 2 here, because of course they're single-shot rifles and he doesn't have time to reload. It's a really stupid story. Somewhere along the line, a computer crash, I lost it. Oh, boo-hoo! Another one, Sime's Ascension, is the working title. I'm sure it won't be published under that. They are finished but unpublished. However, they started out pretty rough too. It's set in kind of like parallel universe China. However, whenever I was writing it, I hadn't done the research necessary to make a good story. Remember that, the research is important. Whenever I started writing it, I didn't even know much about Chinese culture. I just knew that, Romance of the Three Kingdoms is interesting. I really like this book. I'm going to write a book like it. Main character Ling Pao, the daughter of Ding Pao. Wait, in China the surname comes first. So that changed to become Ling Pao, the daughter of Ling Dao. Alright, now we're making a little more sense. We also have her agent advisor, Ko-san. It's actually pronounced Sao-san. Alright. And his adopted son, and his natural son, Ryu-san and Sao-sun. Wait, Ryu isn't Chinese, that's Japanese. And why would he take his father's given name instead of his surname whenever he got adopted? So that became Sao-ru and Sao-sun. And then we have this big beast of man. Diablo. Even wrote it in there. Alright, he's from Spain. Spain didn't exist in 200 AD. Decided to the Spanish language. So he became Mahdi. Two of my good examples.
My name is Mora.
Mora was a 14-year-old summoner. She was abused as a child because her mother died when she was born. And her father, who was a good man at one point in time, kind of cracked under the pressure, started abusing her. She can summon monsters from another realm. It's the main character of Nick 3 Entertainment's one game, Monster. That's Tor. She has named everybody, by the way. That's why the Minotaur's name is Tor. He never refers to humans really as humans or people. They're not people to him. They're just shambling husks. Except for Mora. She's kind of like his little sister.
I can't wait to see what color his blood is.
Chris is a crystal nymph. Chris. She's very supportive of Mora. It's like a little sister to her too, but she's also a little psychopathic. She likes to see people bleed. She's got a fascination with water.
It could be dangerous. We can always turn back in. Go home and play in the woods.
Trent makes a lot of comments about being in the woods because she's a tree person. She's a dryad, a treant. It's Trent. Why she has a man's name, which is a regular pun in the game. At one point, going to fight the final boss, you go into a castle, and she says, I don't really like stone floors, but I do like the idea of bringing down a stone castle.
Your wish is my command. Oh, there I go again. This is how stereotypes are made.
When Gene, the Jinn, is introduced into the game, he's released from a lamp. And Moore says, do I get 3 wishes now? He says, that's stupid. That's folk tales. That's not how things happen. The whole game, he is just he is a parody of himself. At one point, they got to get over a castle gate, and he says, wish I had a carpet. I could just fly over it. And
Don't patronize me, you ginger midget. I'll end this rampage of yours with a massacre.
Nasu, the final boss. Final boss of 8 redheads. Mora is a redhead, if you can't tell because of the lighting. After Mora has laid a swath, you fight the final boss, and he is attempting to stop her. Villain you can really get behind because, well, not really behind, because he's trying to murder a 14-year-old girl with developmental challenges because she was abused as a child. But he's interesting. Guys, I'm a shameless self-promoter. A few more good examples from my book. On the left side, we have Captain Seifa. On the right side, we have the Sultana Fatima. Seifa has to escort Fatima in Sultana's journey, hence the name of the title. Seifa is agnostic, while Fatima is pious. Seifa is a great warrior. Fatima is a satisfactory warrior. She can swing a sword, but nothing compared to Seifa. Seifa is poor, Fatima is wealthy. This creates a dynamic between the two. That's what they talk about a lot. Seifa talks about how bad it sucks to be poor. Fatima talks about it's not that nice to be wealthy. And Seifa tells her to shut the hell up because she's wrong. They're both hiding a secret. You gotta buy the book to find out. How to design a good character. As we discussed, a good character is someone you can get into it with. Fantastic. Just trying to move quickly because there wasn't enough time for this. Made enough time. So how to design a good character? First thing you have to figure out what kind of character you're designing. Is it the main character story? Is it the sidekick? Is it a villain? Is it a random NPC? What's the setting? Is this feudal Japan? Is this Mideast? Mideast. Is this Dark Ages Arabia? What's the gender? Male, female, something in between? Basis. What are you looking for? Is it a warrior, a mage, something in between? Just a common citizen who's in over their head. What's their motivation? What are they doing? Why are they going through this quest? What quirks do they have? I mentioned my mercenary character, great spiders, excellent soldier, but he also has PTSD, and he gets through it by he sings a lot. So, in the middle of gunning down a bunch of enemy soldiers, he'll just start singing a pop song. Calvin Harris's Blame It on the Night, I think it's Calvin Harris. Just start singing that. What flaws they have, like I mentioned, severe arachnophobia, PTSD. What themes do you want to have? Are you naming all of your characters based on a theme? Are they all loosely based off of, Norse mythology? You have Thor and Odin or something. Like Alan Wake, the two, old hair metal band guys are Thor and Odin. What are their names? After you get through all that, then you can start looking at names. You can do it before that too. You can come up with a name. All right, what name do I want? You know what? You can make a theme out of these names.
Is it a good idea to flesh out your character as you write, or should you try to flesh it out long before you add it to the story?
The way I like to do it, get it fleshed out a little bit before you start, because as you get to writing, once you get into a groove of it, your character will write themselves. But you want to have that good starting point, because without that starting point, then you're going to get ahead of yourself and realize that something you wrote before, you're going to have to go back and fix in editing, because, well, that's kind of uncharacteristic to how they came out. An example thing I'm working on currently, one of the characters, Birdie. He started off as, he's like the spy master for the Sultan. He started off as this guy that always talked in like an improper way. He would use the wrong tense, and then by chapter 8, he became, started writing himself as a more eloquent, intelligent person. So then I had to go back and rewrite all of his lines to get rid of that quirk, because it really didn't fit with him anymore. But it wouldn't fit with him later on in the story. It's best to have your characters as fleshed out as possible, but you will never have them totally fleshed out until the story is on paper and done.
Sometimes characters just won't behave.
They won't.
Ever.
Character, she hates me for it. Writing it, she's a beautiful character, she's a great character. And then she made herself die. Just couldn't stop her.
Yeah, happens all the time.
Like I said, first the setting, where's the setting, any themes to utilize, element, motif, Chekhov's gun. What do they look like? You can get an idea, once you're getting the description. Spartans, what is your character's profession? What do they do? What hobbies do they have? What's their gender identity? Are they a male character but they identify as female? If you're writing first person, you can make, a mystery through that. Everybody else refers to them as he, but they identify themselves in narrative as she. They always identify themselves as she. Sexuality, straight, gay, something in between. Personality or dialogue quirks. Do they have a stutter, lack of contractions? The one work in progress I told you, Simei's Ascension, the main character, Ling Pao, Simei, she never speaks in contractions. She's a well-educated, wealthy girl. So everything she says, it's cannot, do not. It's never can't, don't. Family, friends, enemies, frenemies. What's their motivation? What do they think? What do they feel? What do they fear? Phobias, any traumas, anything that they delight in. Do they love cheesecake? So even in the midst of a battle, do they bust through the window of a bakery, stop returning fire to go, there's cheesecake there. Can I get the cheesecake without getting shot?
Temporary cheese.
Now we'll go into question and answering mode. The way we're going to do this, anybody who's got a good question, I got a door prize for you. As a matter of fact, you got a really good question. You want a door prize? We got a few books, little handles, pins, big jutsu pins. Have a little anthropomorphic penis on.
I still can't figure out why everyone thinks it's porn.
Yeah. It's just the site's old mascot. You got a question? Go ahead.
Well, you're talking a lot about playwriting. Do you ever break down your writing process into questions such as identifying problems by what are the rules of my world, am I following those? What is a major question that the character needs answered? Stuff like that. Do you ever break down your process that way?
Absolutely. One thing I always have problems with, anything that has magic in it, very few of them, in my experience, my reading, my playing, have finite rules of magic that I am okay with. Anything that I write that has magic, the magic always has, definite rules. One example that you'll have, look at Final Fantasy VIII. Everybody's favorite Final Fantasy. Cypher has a technique that starts, he casts a fire spell and then attacks. except that magic in that game works by how many spells you have available. But when he uses that technique, he's suddenly able to cast a fire spell without reducing his amount of fire spells available. And that breaks the reader, player, watcher, whatever, out of the experience a little bit, because now you're breaking your own rules. Think of other examples. One story that I've written, it's also not published because it's not finished. There is magic per se, but it's actually chemistry. They just refer to it as magic. So it runs on the same premise that chemistry in the real world would work. That was a good one, though. If you want to come up, grab something. Go ahead.
Do you think you can do too much world building?
You can. You get that a lot. When you're writing a book, or really whatever you're doing to get it published, depending on your word count, that's really what your title falls into. A short story is anything under 15,000 words. You get into a novella, that's anything, or a novelette. I can never remember which one comes first, novella or novelette. But that goes up to like 40,000. A novel is anything over 60 or 80,000. A romance is anything over like 120,000 words. But that all gets broken up with either sci-fi or fantasy. You can generally expect between 20 or 40,000 more words for a sci-fi or fantasy book, because not being set in the real world, there's so much world building that you just expect to have a longer story. You can world build too much if there's a lot of things going on in the world that don't involve your character or any of the characters in your story. May not be really necessary. Imagine Lord of the Rings. Huge map, huge everything. Let's say that the story started in the Shire and went straight into Mount Doom.
Mordor.
Mordor, thank you. I was like, Mount Doom, where's Mount Doom at? And let's say they didn't go through Gondor at all. But all through it you get reports of the battle in Gondor. Nobody cares. We haven't been there, we're not going to be there, nobody cares. That's world building that you don't need. You can also be too descriptive about characters themselves. You get into too much backstory for them, and they always say show, don't tell. An example of that is to show a character, you open it up with them looking in the mirror and describing themselves. It's really a poor way to show versus tell. Telling is better in that aspect, to say how tall they are, what color their hair is. But you can tell too much. Has anybody read Moby Dick?
Yeah.
Good, it looks like nobody else liked it either. Moby Dick has an entire chapter devoted to describing the eye of the whale. You don't need that.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Also, like 100 pages to even hear about a whale.
Yeah. Yeah. You're in there by chapters.
This is chapter.
I don't know, I never finished that chapter. I was like, go ahead.
You're talking a lot about building a character, but what exactly do you incorporate things such as character design? Like, where do you start and how would you make them go along?
Depends on your particular writing style. Some things also depends on the story. Sometimes you might look at a story as, I want to write a story about this. So you come up with the overall narrative. This is the story. Now, what kind of people would be in there? People like this, people like that, people like that. You draw from that your characters. You can also start it from the other side. I want to write a story with a character like this. What kind of world would that character be in? What would that character do in that world? So you can start it from either end. Just that some writers will just sit down with a blank piece of paper and be like, story. Other ones, like me, will sit down and be like, all right, let's outline some things. Let's get character biographies. Let's write out all the biographies of the characters and start from there. Let's put them into this world and go from that. Answer pretty well?
You mentioned about giving characters flaws to try to make them like not American and such. I know that sometimes people will do something called faux flaws, where it's like it's meant to be a flaw but not really. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's where you get into like Mary Sue's, Gary Stu's, whenever it's a faux flaw. Like, every time I aim a gun, it's just bam, right in the bullseye. I can't miss. It's not a flaw. You want to avoid those as much as possible, because that gets into the too perfect at everything stuff. Like, oh, I trip constantly, but that's how the enemy is defeated. You gotta be careful about that. That's your question?
Yeah.
I have two. My first one is, I'm not very good at like getting like an outline and stuff. So my full like first story is going to be mostly free-written.
Mm-hmm.
And also my second question is there a thing as too many characters?
Yes, there are. Actually, if anybody's ever read anything from crack.com, they just had a thing about the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen where they said, the first thing you need to do is decrease, cut the character list in half. I don't really think you need to go that far. But I mentioned Naruto before. Naruto has a huge cast of characters. Bleach, too. And if you're just doing something short, like a single novel or something, it's way too many characters. The more characters you have, the more time you need to develop each character. Otherwise, you have basically useless characters. You have people that nobody's going to care about. So when you get through it, and one of them dies, it's supposed to be a dramatic thing. It's dramatic to you because you've got the character in your mind. They mean something to you. If you haven't gotten on paper or on film or whatever, what that character means to you, to the audience, then they're going to die and be like, don't care, on to the next thing.
It's like, fine.
So you want to keep your character base small enough that it's intimate. Imagine a social gathering. If you're at a ball and there's 100 people there, you're not going to be able to talk to everyone and get everyone's life story and care about any of them. You're going to have 2 or 3 people that talk to you and it's like, oh, you're interesting, I want to talk to you. So, I mean, if you've got 5 people in your story, even if they're in a room of 100 people, if those 5 are the characters of the story, those 5 move it and motivate it, you can get people into those 5. Now, anything they do with the other 100 people, they're definitely going to care about those 5 more than the other 100, or the other 95. I can't do math. Back again, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. This might be a nitpicking question, but I have issues when it comes to like repetitive words.
Yes.
For example, like instead of saying and, I might say like plus, and then I realize I might say it like way too much in a paragraph. Is that possible to have too much of one word or what?
Absolutely.
Thesaurus.com. I'm not kidding. I wouldn't have finished my novel about that.
When my book was being edited, my editor highlighted a paragraph, and she's like, you realize in one paragraph you used the word they 5 times. And I was like, nah, 2, 3, 4. I did. In that case, like he said, break open a thesaurus, look at it. Another way to do it is, if you're looking at it, it's like, all right, I've used they, I've used he, I've used she, and I've still got 3 theys in there. Then you can look at, maybe write a descriptor of the person. They did this, they did that, and turn into they did this. The group did that, or signified of this person or these people. But yeah, there's definitely, you can be repetitive to things, especially in the same paragraph. You want to avoid using the same term too many times on the same page, particularly. Because, Thank you. You flip the page, and now you're onto a new page, so the things that were on the last page aren't as fresh into the mind. So if you use they 3 times on that page and use they 3 times on this one, you can get away with that. You don't want to use it 6 times on the same page. Same with like a descriptor of a character, like the ninja did this, the ninja did that. So the ninja did this, the darkly clad man did that or said this. But yeah, there is definitely a limit where you can hit, whoa, use that word too many times. Next question. Okay.
Because of your writing process, which actually is similar to mine, how many drafts do you usually go through before you tell yourself this is some sort of standard before maybe you brought it into the editor or whomever it is?
Drafts before I finish a story, or drafts before I submit that to the editor to say, here?
Before you submit it.
let's see, they call it rewriting, which is really a bad term because rewriting sounds like, all right, I wrote it, delete it, let's try it again. Rewriting is really just initial editing. The first thing you're going to do, you're going to write it all out and be like, all right, cool. And you're going to reread it, and you're going to fix your spelling errors, your typos, your,
I was gonna say, have someone else read it too before you hit the editor.
yeah, your misspelled woes. I meant to spell woe wrong 3 times in a row. Whoa, whoa, whoa. W-O-A-H. That went all the way to the editor. As I read through that, I was like, yep. How many times? Let's see. Escort is made up of 3 stories: Shrine Maiden Secret, Sultana's Journey, and Welshman's Hunt. Shrine Maiden Secret is the oldest story. It went through 6 versions before the publisher saw it. Sultana's Journey went through 3 or 4.
Sounds about right.
Either 3 or 4 versions. The Welshman's Hunt was one of those. I gave both of them, and the publisher was like, these are really good. Can you get a 3rd one to us by the end of the month? Yes. I sat down and I wrote it in 48 hours.
I don't think you slept much.
I did not. I didn't know what the word sleep meant at that particular time. That one only went through 2 versions because, like I said, it was down to the wire. And really what you want to do, once you finish it, say, all right, perfect. Set it down, walk away from it. Don't read it again for a week because you will have things like you're missing words in a sentence and you won't notice it because you just wrote it. It's still fresh in your mind, so you'll read through it. It'll be like, we did this, and did is missing, we this, but you'll read it as we did this.
Don't forget too, if you're like him a lot, he gets a lot of big words and doesn't know what layman's terms is sometimes.
Superfluous is my favorite word. Superfluous is an example of itself. Superfluous, if you don't know, means a word that is unnecessarily large. Superfluous can be cut down into 3 letters, B-I-G.
So if you're talking about like Chinese history, like what he does a lot, try to have someone else who's not entirely into it read it because they'll point out, wait, this name sounds way too much like this name. He did that with Sultana's Journey. Fatima was actually named
Shajar. She's based off of the historical person, the Shajar al-Dur, means tree of pearls in Arabic. But the main character is Saifa, the other main character is Shajar.
it was too confusing for someone who's not entirely up with the history.
So we changed Shajar's name to Fatima.
To be able to tell the difference better. So just try to remember that too. Have a few people proofread it because everyone will kind of give you an idea of, all right, you know, this works well, that works well. It's basically the more people that see it and can say, oh wait, you spelled that wrong. Because we both went through this entire time with escort, entirely forgetting that escort has a double meaning, not only escort missions, but also a prostitute.
Yeah.
We went through the entire time making this book and never even once thought of that until my grandfather said, oh, it's about prostitutes.
Whoops. It's like, no, it's about soldiers taking a person. Oh my goodness.
So yeah, just kind of remember that not everyone kind of can understand things. Oh, one more.
If you find yourself getting stuck into a rut with one particular writing lane, you always have Conan as a hero to whatever it is, even if it's a sci-fi epic. How do you break yourself out of that?
A lot of people will say, sit down and just keep writing, just push through it. That's how you get through like writer's block or something. I personally can't do that. I know a lot of writers who can. I'm very neurotic. If I get stuck on a story, I say, there's always something else I can work on. My mood shifts. I get 40,000 words in 3 weeks on a story, and I sit there and go, man, I don't really know what to do right now. None of my characters are talking to me. But you know what? I'm into a samurai kick now, so I'll leave Arabia, and I'll go to feudal Japan, and I'll write this. And then maybe I'll put 20,000 words on that, and then think, oh, you know what would work in the Arabian story? And I can go back to that. A lot of writers can't do that, because once they leave a story, they come back to it, and it's, what was I thinking for this? What was I going to do? What was the main quest? That's another reason why I like to outline so much before I start. Follow up that?
Well, I was thinking if it was like a lot, like you're going from story to story, and you wind up writing the same thing.
The best thing, that's actually how Escort got made. I was getting a little stagnant in my writing, and I was like, what can I do? So I like to give myself writing challenges. Something really weird. And so I went to her, and I was like, give me a writing prompt. She's like what? Something that I wouldn't normally write. I normally write historical fiction, a few modern pieces.
And I told him, first of all, something with a happy ending. And second of all, how did I phrase it?
She was like, main character, Futanari. Everybody doesn't know what Futanari is. It's a hermaphrodite. Somebody born with both sets of genitalia. And I was like, that's really something I wouldn't write. She was like, and erotica. That's really something I wouldn't write. Transsexual erotica. Okay. And that's how Escort got started. It shifted a little bit away from that, but it has, I don't know when it will be, but I've already been approached to be on Gay Life TV. I didn't know it existed either. But at some point I will have an interview on that. It's a subscription cable channel. Like I said, if you got a Roku box, you can pay $6 a month and get it, if you're into that. As Seinfeld would say, oh, there's nothing wrong with that.
You got 2 minutes.
Yeah. So that's a good way to do it. Just give yourself good writing prompts. Write something that's totally out of your way. You're talking about Conan as the hero, so write something from the villain's perspective. Imagine, Conan's villain, in the next story. Write a story from his perspective. What's his motivation? What does he think? Or, usually write, something, like I said, historical fiction. So set your next piece, even if it's just a short story or flash fiction, something you can sit down and write in one sitting, something you can sit down and read in one sitting. And just make it set on a spaceship. Something totally out of your realm. How much time did you say?
Like 2 minutes. Probably got time for like maybe one more question.
Anybody have a short question? In the suit, go ahead.
So you said that character development, like outlines beforehand, are one of the main parts of integrating the character into the story. So let's say you have a large collection of characters that the plot basically revolves around. How do you work on developing an outline beforehand that allows for distinct characters, but they're also synergistic to have that?
Honestly, I've used flowcharts before. That make a box with each character's name in it, and you put a circle in the middle of whatever the overarching plot is, what connects them all. And then you line everything to it, and you figure out, all right, where are intersecting lines? Where can people be intersected? Where are divergent lines? Where do they not come together? And those are the things you need to work on. If these 5 characters are all part of this main central thing, what is only one person part of? Write a chapter about that. My latest work in progress. It's all from the Sultan's perspective, but this chapter, Sultan's doing boring things. Nobody cares what he's doing. But if I skip over that, then there's 8 months that have passed. Other people are doing things. So I go to them. What are they doing in that time? Nobody cares what Assad is doing. They care what Buri is doing. They care what Rabia is doing. So I write a chapter from Buri's perspective, a chapter from Rabia's perspective. In 8 months, they all come back together, and we're back with Assad, and it's Assad's point of view. But for 3 chapters, I'm with other people. That's a good way to do it. Outline, what those 3 people would be, or what those other 3 people would be doing at that time. It's a divergent line. So that's the best way to do it, I would say, is divergence. I want to make you guys late for your next panel. If anybody else has other questions, there's a form on the right-hand side of Punctuation.com to contact me, email me. I'll respond to anything you want. Anybody who asked a question, if you want to come up and grab door prize, thank you all for coming.